What's going on, boys? My name is Joe. This is TheDuelFactory, and in today's video, we're actually taking it to a retro format. As many of you know, especially if you follow like the podcast or if you watch some of the videos in the channel previously in the past or anything like that, I'm a huge fan of 2014 Nationals format. And my one claim to fame, if you can even call it that, was the water deck. It's probably one of my favorite decks of all time. I'm actually really upset with myself because during this time, I actually didn't play a lot of water. Mainly because I was fixated with the Dragon Ruler deck, but it is one of my favorite format, if not my favorite format to go back and play just for fun. I like it a lot better than GOAT format, and it's been picking up a lot of popularity, especially with like 2011 format. And if you actually been watching PAX official TCG or his Twitch, whatever you want to call it, he actually plays water deck for 2014, but he just recently switched to Sylvan. But anyway, I wanted to bring you this because I've had these cards sitting in my deck box. Because me and Doug played some 2014 format the last time I saw him a couple weeks ago, and I didn't want to let this go to waste, so I'm going to go ahead and show you a retro format deck profile for that. But before we start the deck profile, don't forget to check out the X2 Drop podcast, check out Bingo HD, check out Legacy Crusaders, and let's hop right into this profile after that. So to start off with the main deck, remember some things for this format. You could draw 6 going first before... this was also before the change with the Master Rule 3, I think it was, and it also before Duelist Alliance came out. So you draw 6 going first, but this is like one of those rare decks that was actually really good going second. But we play 1 copy of Megalo. In this format, Dragoons is at 1, and it actually made it kind of hard to play this because you didn't have as much frequent access to it, but you still wanted it when you're going for your game pushes. Plus, it's also searched the Bisphere, so this card was actually kind of crazy. Probably one of the better cards in the deck, and probably the best card in the deck, is 3 copies of Mermail Atlantean. Not a whole lot to say. This card's crazy. It was a 1-drop that activated all your water effects, and it just did a lot for your deck. It also, I'm not playing it in this build, but it also facilitated the Mermail Atlantean combo. Was probably the best going first play this deck actually had to offer, where it ended on like Bahamut Shark, Trite, and a mech-equipped Engineer. Which could either protect itself or protected the Bahamut Shark the second turn, depending on what you were playing. But I'm not playing that in this list. But if you want to see a combo video for that, I'll show you what it was in 2014. It wasn't like the craziest combo, but it was something this deck had access to. But this does a lot more than that. It gives you access to your Pikes. It gives you access to your Turges, like all sorts of stuff. And it's also the best way to search Gund. 3 copies of Mermail Abyss Pike. This was your best level 4 normal summon. And you wanted to max out on it because, like I said, it gave you access to your gun. It also gave you access to your Undines and gave you access to your Marksmen. So that's why I really like that card. Believe it or not, Gun was not 1 at this format because it was crazy the previous one, so it went to 1. But yeah, Gun was just crazy. There's not a whole lot to say. It gave you all your recursion. There is a line of play of like if they blew up your if you blew up your Mermail Abyssland, you could get to Pike, discard, Gun, search Marksman, and then the gun would bring back Turge. Turge would add the gun back to your hand, and then like it just gave you free ranks 4 every turn. So that's why I thought the card was crazy, or that's essentially one of the reasons. Like it's just a free rank 4 every time you resolved it, so it was just crazy. 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Turge. If we had more guns, I'd probably play a 2nd copy, but this card wasn't all that popular in Mermail decks at the time. But I still think you needed to play 1 to facilitate the rank 4 combos. And then a card I haven't seen in a Waterless in a very, very long time was 3 copies of Mermail Abyssland. This was your best floater for that format. It made your spheres really deadly because you could do a lot of cool damage. Because when the most popular way for the land to get destroyed was to be run over by battle. And then when you're running over the enemy and you're proceeding through the damage step and stuff like that, your Pikes can resolve for free and they can't be like bottomless or anything like that. It was just kind of crazy. Especially in the mirror match, it was really popular when you were playing the mirror that you would put like a Dweller and Lind, and that put like a lot of pressure on your opponent, especially in the mirror, because then they had to respond to your Dweller, and then they also had to respond to your Lind, and all in the same turn without using their graveyard. We played onto the Atlantean cards, right? We played 3 copies of Marksman. This card was insane. So now in newer deck profiles, especially if you fast forward the clocks, you don't see Marksman played almost ever at all. But in this format, this card was crazy against like the hat decks because it started picking off their back rows. It started prematurely picking off like their ice hands and stuff like that. But where it really shined is it picked off Yugioh decks. Like it picked off their armors and made it really hard to play that deck. That's why this card was like crazy insane. And then we're only allowed to play 1 Dragoons. So we're only play 1 Dragoons, but you had plenty of access to this card, especially since you were playing searchable cards like your Undine. And then there's some really cool plays you could also do with if you needed access to it, there's some cool plays, because we had Title in this deck, so you can send it off Title too. Like, there's a bunch of cool stuff. And then the One of Infantry, this card actually was not that popular back in that format, but you still play the One of out generic like Floodgates and stuff like that. The only things that really couldn't out were cards like Soul Drain or Macro or stuff like that, but there were cards like, for example, Mount Sylvania was a really good one to out. Fiends, your opponent's opposing Fiends Chains, Floodgate Monsters. Like, there's a bunch of stuff it could do. And then for the one-ofs, Title, I really wish we could get this card back in our current format, but Title is just insane. It's what made the deck unfair, and it also made it like a tier 1 deck at the time. Because being able to bring back a recurable level 7 body every single turn because of the amount of water monsters you put in your graveyard was insane. It manipulated the graveyard really well for cards like Levy or the Sea Dragon. It was really good for cards like this, Smolin Glacia, which were really good at just ripping your opponent's cards out of your hand, but you had to be careful with that card because Infernity was really popular too, so sometimes you just set them up for free and that's not good. And then for tech choices, I play 2 copies of Aqua Spirit because I think a free level 4 monster that you can summon from this deck is super crucial, and you just need to play it. If I had room, I'd play 3, but I don't have room for it. And then the other good normal summon in the deck was Undyne. Undyne was crazy because it sent water monsters that cost, so it triggered your Atlanteans, but it also sent cards like Title to the graveyard, which gave you access to your recurable level 7 every single turn. And then to facilitate the 2 Undynes, you play 2 copies of Controller. You have to play this or else you can't play the Undyne engine at all, but not much to say there. But that was the monster lineup. We'll go to the actual spell cards itself. The Hope and Theory was really, really popular in this format. So we could still play 3 copies of Upstart, which was crazy, because it just gave your deck like an unfair consistency boost, and it did for every single deck, right? Arguably, the deck that was craziest in, if you really had to think about it, was anything that could play Lavalval Chain because it was just a free search, or where it was really, really insane, I think, was the Sylvan deck, but it's just mandatory 3 of, honestly. 2 copies of Soul Charge. This card is insane in this format. Like, I miss Soul Charge Wars. It's like one of my guilty pleasures. The problem is turn 1, water can't like really utilize it unless you open like absolutely busted. But it's one of those cards, like, you draw it and like it changes the game in your favor, because Mermail is a 2-card combo deck that usually saves all of its resources for a big push, but if you fail in that big push, you need a way to start playing again, and then Soul Charges gives you that ability, so that's why I think it was crazy in this deck. I played the One of Lair Darkness for the Gen X controllers. It just gives you added consistency. Arguably, this card gets cited out a lot, I'm not going to lie to you, because a lot of times you normal summon the controller with a level 7, or like when you mind control your opponent to make Black Rose, and that's those are like huge power plays. You can make Leo, Black Rose, whatever, right? So that card gets cited out a lot, but game 1, it gives you like a consistency boost that you really need. The unfair one of the deck, which was Mind Control, like I said, worked really well with your tuners, mainly GNX controller. And then 1 copy of Dark Hole to clear the field. And then on to the trap cards. It's actually a really, really small lineup. So we play 3 copies of Abyss Sphere. This was your best trap card in your deck. It gave you access to your lens. It gave you access. Actually, it was just essentially, it's not E-Telly, but it was on the same wavelength as like E-Telly because it just provided a free body. But it also put you really far ahead when you can resolve your lens. The problem with this card, though, is like it was huge MST bait, and it was the only card that you would really MST in this matchup, or it's like an ignition magnet. Like, so it's very hard to resolve the card, but you have to play it because of the threat of it resolving. So that way your opponent just doesn't let you, like, you don't let your opponent get away with not respecting the card in your deck. Is basically what I'm trying to get at. And then Dweller was really hard on your deck, so you had to play cards like Breakthrough Skill to out the Dwellers. Plus, it had the added benefit of it also started like Artifact Moral Tax, it stopped Archfiends, like there's a bunch of things that this card stopped. And then the 2 one-ofs, right now it's Warning and Bottomless. At the making of this deck profile, my Torrentials were on something else, so I just put something in place of it, and that was Warning. But honestly, that'll probably get cut for Torrential, but I mean, like I said, they're just power trap cards. That's all there is to say about it. And that's it for the Spell and Trap lineup. On to the actual extra deck itself. Black Rose Dragon. It's really good with GNX control. It's really good with Mind Control. And if it resolves, half the time it's game. So you better respect Black Rose, because I know a lot of people in 2040, they don't respect Exciton or Black Rose, and they just get blown out by it. This card was really, really hard to out in 2014 Nationals format, and this was like one of the few decks that could play it. So for those of you who don't know, it reads, it cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effect except during your main phase 2. And half the time, if it was just one of those games, like if your opponent couldn't add if you don't go into main phase 2, and half the time when that happens, and the only time you ever switch your phases is when you're going for game, really. So like your opponent had to find a way to out the Leo, and there wasn't a lot, especially with the lack of like board removal and stuff like that in the game. Onto the XYZs, Mech Equipped Engineer. This card was really, really good. It made it really hard for your opponent to out a lot of cards. Not much to say on that one. Mermail Atlantean, you literally only summon this off of your Bahamut Shark, but this card's insane because it's another floater that your deck had. Levier the Sea Dragon. This card I think was really, really good in this deck, especially with the manipulation you had in your graveyard with Tidal, because you had such easy access to it, and also access to it through your Aqua Spirits. Because one of the cool plays is if you had 2 level 3s, you can make a Levier, and then you could banish like Dragoons from your graveyard to summon Aqua Spirit, and then use the Levier to bring back Dragoon to make like a Dweller or a Bahamut Shark, and then just detach it to get a free search off of Dragoons, and that's why I think that card's insane in this deck. On to your rank 4s. Rhapsody Berserk. This is really good against the Dragon matchup. It's really good against a lot of matchups in this deck that were also graveyard reliant, and it also took away like Call the Haunted targets and stuff like that. Plus it gave some monsters 1200 boost because people forget and equip and do that, so this card was actually just crazy. 1 copy of Lavalval Chain. Not much to say. Unchained to Chain 2021, yeah. But no, I'm just kidding. But it gave you access to your titles, it gave you access to more water monsters, and you could also put cards on top of your deck and search them with Upstart Goblin if you needed to. I saw Sahabi Carradini, I believe his name was. He was playing this in his list for the ARG event. I don't know how I feel about Emerald. I think I'm going to cut it for like an Alucard, but it put like cards back in your deck like controllers, so you could resolve your Undines following in a turn and stuff like that. It had a lot of uses. Plus, it could also bring back the controller if you needed to, because like revive normal monsters. I always forget about that. The best card in this format, Dweller, not much to say. If I had room for 2, I would play 2, and I'd probably cut something for it, but card's crazy. 1 copy of Honor Arc. This card was also insane in the format, and a lot of people forget, but you can actually trigger Dragoon's effect by detaching it from Silent Honor Arc because it is a cost. The man himself, Exciton Knight, he just nukes the field, you gotta respect him. Bahamut Shark, this is what you were making to summon your trait and force your opponent to have to play through your floaters. And then on to the rank 7s, the best reason to play this deck, honestly. You have 1 copy of Big Eye to steal cards, 1 copy of Draco Sack to clear them, and then what I personally think is the best rank 7 is Mermail Atlantean. It's essentially a skill drain on legs, and then one of the effects that people forget about with that card is as long as it has an XYZ material, level 5 or higher monsters actually cannot declare attacks, and a lot of people forget about that, especially in the Dragon matchup, because they'll summon a bunch of dragons to try to push, and I'll be like, but we have Yugioh on the field, and then just kind of look at you blankly. And that is it for my 2014 Nationals Mermail deck profile. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. If you like retro formats, or if you have something that you want me to profile, because I literally own every single deck from 2014 that you could possibly think of, and it's all filled out, so I like playing with these cards. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.